set so we can start reading.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We are about to get started. Good evening, everyone. We are about to get started. My name is Tanya Cantlow, and I am the acting counsel to the Borough President. To the right of me, I have Ina Gusenfeld, who is the land use coordinator. To my far left, I have Richard Barrick, who is our land use director. And of course, to my right, to my immediate left is our Borough President, Eric Adams. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. We are broadcasting the hearing in multiple spaces in Borough Hall tonight, including this courtroom, the first floor community room, and the Borough President Adams conference room, also located on the first floor. There is one item on the agenda this evening. Borough President Adams' goal is to ensure that community members have a public say about proposals that impact their neighborhoods. Borough President Adams also feels that it is important to balance the critical values of free speech with public safety. As a large crowd is expected tonight, we cannot guarantee that all attendees will be able to observe the hearing in the hearing room. In order to accommodate the public to the extent practical, this hearing is being simulcast into the community room on the first floor. We ask that those that are watching but not speaking, please observe the hearing from the first floor community room to allow speakers access to the podium when their names are called. Those who arrive later but sign up to speak will be directed to the overflow spaces. We ask that those who have already testified to watch the hearing in the spaces where it is being simulcast so that later speakers can make their way to the courtroom. We anticipate a large number of speakers for tonight's hearing. In order to reduce the expected wait time, we are limiting each speaker's remarks to 2 minutes. Please note that Spanish and Mandarin translation will be provided to those who require it. Finally, to ensure smooth flow of speakers and maximize the number of people who are able to testify, we ask that the audience refrain from applauding or commenting after each speaker. We hope to avoid any delays that will prevent anyone signed up from testifying or lead people to leave before their names are called. Borough President Adams wants all speakers to have the opportunity to be heard. At the conclusion of each speaker's testimony, we will call up multiple speakers and request that the called speakers move to the seats on the side of the podium to be ready when their turn comes. This hearing will be available for viewing on Borough President's website, brooklyn-usa.org, or on the One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. For those wishing to provide longer testimony as well as web viewers, Borough President Adams welcomes having the complete comments submitted to Ask Eric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov through the month of January. Please call the item and let us begin.
Let me open first. I just want to open with a brief comment before we start. As some of you sitting up front, you noticed the baby was running up front. We have a rule here. We don't restrict the movement of children in Borough Hall. They're allowed to run around as much as they want and do whatever they want in this building. We restrict the movement of adults here, not children. This is a children-friendly space. We have a lactation room downstairs for our mothers, and just want to be clear. I want to hear from as many people as possible. My apology, we had to switch the date. I was unable to make that date, and I wanted to be here. I didn't want to hear only through my staff, and that is why we moved the date so I can be in the room and hear from as many of you as possible. What is extremely important, many of these issues and hearings we have here in Borough Hall, they can be emotional issues. But if we don't allow our neighbors to speak, then we're not respecting our neighbors. We have a clock here. That's a 2-minute clock. As you speak from the podium, just peek over at it from time to time so you can stay on the 2 minutes so we can get to as many people as possible. We don't want the first speakers to address the audience and then the last speaker is waiting far beyond the time that's allocated. There's a number of speakers that have signed up. Just really, I'm asking you to adhere to the 2-minute number or time that's on the clock so we can get as many people as possible and we can gather as much information as possible. You can also email. You can get the information to us as easy or whichever way you think is possible. If someone is not here and you would like to have their voices heard, please feel free to reach out to our office as well. And so I'm pretty sure together we could have a good manner in which we could hear from each other and allow all of our views to be heard and go through the hearing in a very timely fashion. And we're joined by Carlos Machaca, the councilman in the area. Thank you, Carlos, for joining us. I know you held a series of hearings around this as well. And so, and now we're going to move forward. Okay, Richard?
Yes. I'd also like to acknowledge in the audience we have a representative from Public Advocate Jemani Williams, Jibril Giallo. So calendar item number 160146 MMK 190296 ZMK 190297 ZSK 190298 ZRK.
This application submitted by 1-10 Bush Terminal Owner LP and 19-20 Bush Terminal Owner LP pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the New York City Charter for the following land use actions. 1, a change to the city map to DMAP 40th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenues. 2, a zoning map amendment to replace an M3-1 district and establish an M2-4 district between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, generally between 32nd and 37th Streets, and between 39th and 41st Streets, generally between 50 feet west of 1st Avenue and 2nd Avenue. A zoning text amendment to establish a special industry city district within the boundaries of each area. A zoning map amendment to establish the special industry city district within the New York City zoning resolution as section 129-21, establishing a special permit to enable modification of specific sections, stipulating uses permitted as of right, specifying performance standards and regulations governing floor area, height, and setback in yards. The grant of a special permit pursuant to section 129-21 for a proposed commercial development planned as a unit and comprising an area of at least 1.5 acres on the properties to be rezoned. The total affected area would include 12 lots comprising part of Industry City, together with 7 lots that the applicant intends to acquire, and 3 lots that are expected to remain in separate ownership. Such actions would further facilitate the ongoing expansion, renovation, and retenanting of existing properties, as well as the construction of new floor space permitted as an enlargement of existing buildings, as well as newly constructed buildings that might together increase the size of Industry City in excess of 6.4 million square feet. The mixed-use project envisions a combination of innovation and manufacturing uses, commercial space, a training facility for the Brooklyn Nets, community facilities, including academic space, and within such floor area, permission to include up to 900,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space and up to 2 hotels. Community Board 7 has not yet taken a position on this application. Borough President Adams will hold off on making any decisions until he hears from the board. We will now begin calling speakers on this application. As a reminder, each speaker will have 2 minutes to testify. To accommodate all who wish to speak, speakers should limit testimony to the allotted time, and audience members should refrain from applause and comments. In order to minimize wait time for those seeking to testify that would not be given the opportunity until much later into the hearing, we also ask that organizations with several members present designate a single speaker to provide their testimony rather than duplicate remarks. Once testimony has been given, speakers should make their way downstairs to the community room or the conference room so that those are waiting to speak may proceed to the courtroom. There are several staff members in the room who will assist you in this process.
Okay, so we're going to call first several speakers. So the representative from Public Advocate Jimani Williams, Jibril Giallo, Andrew Kimball, David Sosa, Joshua Soto, and looks like Maria Roca.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jibril Giallo, and I am the Brooklyn Borough Advocate for the Office of the New York City Public Advocate Jimani Williams. I want to thank Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams for holding this public hearing on the Industry City rezoning application. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Jimani Williams, and this is a statement as it reads. Today, I'm glad to stand with the community and with its local city representation to oppose this rezoning. The environmental impact of this action would be severe. The proposal as it stands lacks adequate climate adaptation or mitigation and threatens to exacerbate issues of gentrification, loss of social cohesion, and climate vulnerability. Any rezonings must be done with the community needs in mind and in full consultation with that community. I have been calling for a requirement for racial impact studies on rezonings, something I think is clearly needed in this case. I stand with residents who face an affordability crisis. I stand with this community who face an oncoming wave of gentrification and oncoming threats of climate damage, both of which will be exacerbated if this rezoning takes place. Thank you for your time and consideration.
The next speaker is Andrew Kimball.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Kimball. I'm CEO of Industry City. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Industry City's rezoning, a plan that, if approved, will generate more than 20,000 jobs, attract $1 billion of private investment, and spur enormous economic opportunity for residents of Sunset Park and throughout Brooklyn. Brooklyn's home to 3 massive industrial complexes on the waterfront: the city-owned and managed Brooklyn Navy Yard and Brooklyn Army Terminal, and the privately owned Industry City. Prior to joining Industry City, I led the Navy Yard redevelopment for 8 years, turning a long-abandoned, underutilized eyesore, more often associated with corruption than job creation, into a national model for urban industrial adaptive reuse. By embracing the innovation economy, the broad range of making a physical, digital, or engineered product, and modern manufacturing, while relentlessly focusing on local workforce development opportunities, we were able to attract $250 million in public funding that in turn leveraged over $1 billion in private funds and thousands of new jobs. And now the city is doubling down on its investment at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. In 2013, I jumped at the opportunity to join a new ownership group at Industry City, the private sector version of the Navy Yard, who are committed to bringing that long decrepit, underutilized complex back to life with a similar focus on the innovation economy and local engagement and opportunity. But there was one big difference. As a private property, government funding for infrastructure improvements was not an option. Industry City has come alive thanks to hundreds of local entrepreneurs who have embraced our vision over the last 6 years. Employment has grown from 1,900 to 8,000, new businesses from 150 to 550. $400 million have been invested, $100 million of which has been spent at local businesses. 1 of 5 people who live and work in Sunset Park are working at Industry City. We're at a fork in the road. Will our city's leaders support this kind of private sector economic development with practical adjustments to outdated rezoning that lock in and expand the community connections?
I'm sorry. Andrew, can you hold on for a moment? I want to be real clear. I will not have this hearing. I'll stop this hearing if we're not going to respect each other to be able to speak. You have an opportunity, when you come to the microphone, you can say what your opinion is. But we would not be disruptive in this place.
We're at a fork in the road. Will our city's leaders support this kind of private sector economic development with practical adjustments to outdated rezonings that lock in and expand community connections and academic partnerships established
Please.
over the last 6 years?
Wrap up,
With your
please.
support of this plan, we can ensure the benefits of redevelopment stay close to home. Thank you.
David Sosa, please.
Come on, listen.
Good evening. My name is David Sosa. I was born and raised in the community. I was compelled to speak because I came to the meeting last time at Prospect Hall, and I heard people talk about the neighborhood like there was nothing here before. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the people I grew up around, like my parents, working class people who work sunrise to sunset. My dad in a factory, my mom worked cleaning houses and babysitting. They still do. And I grew up around hardworking people.
61. That was between 53rd and 57th Street. This was accomplished in 1977. We then began the fight for additional housing in the area and other support services. The city at that time was faced with its own fiscal and economic crisis and was totally unresponsive to our calls for mixed-use zoning, affordable housing, and importantly, community access to the waterfront, which the community, I'm happy to say, 2 decades later, was able to win.
Yeah, I ask you to sum up.
So my main pitch is that Sunset Park will be much better off with Industry City, fighting with it, bringing in more shops, more taxes, more entrepreneurial opportunities. Okay.
Yeah,
It's only
we
been
asked you to
52
sum up,
years,
please,
folks.
please. Janet Cerrone, followed by Joe Gonzales, followed by Regina Mayer, followed by Marcela. I'm gonna have trouble with this. Martinez. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Janet Cerrone. I was born and raised in Sunset Park, and I'm one of the members in a part of the Sunset Park Organized Neighbors group here. Some of the points are a collective point from our group, and as well as my personal experience. My family of 6 calls 3rd Avenue in the shadows of the Gowanus Expressway home. And why is that? In the early 90s, my mom and dad were evicted because my mom was pregnant with her 3rd child at the time. Many landlords of 5th and 6th Avenue, what some may call Sunset Park Sunset Park East, refused to house my family and I because we were too big and my dad looked like an alcoholic. That's racial prejudice, I think, just because he is of Mexican descent. Now, we moved on to 2nd and 3rd Avenue to look for housing, and we've been living there ever since. We've called 3rd Avenue our home for 20 plus years. Many families members that live there because there are rent-stabilized apartments there. But Industry City's rezoning plan is a direct threat to that affordable housing that was preserved in the 1970s. And so by saying yes to this plan, you're effectively displacing people of color, families from working communities, people like me who needed a place to live that was affordable so she can go on and get her 4-year degree. Now, discriminating against people of color and these placements that happen is illegal under the Fair Housing Act of 1948. So I don't care what I see plans for, bringing in money. The money is already here. I just want the 3rd Avenue to be protected, all of Sunset Park to be protected. Greenlighting this plan is not putting any safeguards, and instead of what it's doing, it's pushing out so many of the residents here that call this place home. This is not going to be a sanctuary city if you're kicking out immigrant families. You're pushing us out to places that are not going to protect us. Pennsylvania is not very friendly to us, neither is Jersey sometimes. So please, just preserve the housing and vote no.
Joe Gonzales, followed by Regina Mayer, followed by Marcela.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Gonzales, and I'm a taxpayer, lifelong Brooklyn resident, and I stand here in opposition to the proposed rezoning of Industry City. I grew up in Fort Greene, and when I got pushed out of there, I'm in Bed-Stuy now. If anyone here has any inkling on what a rezoning does, then you need to look at the history of this city over the last 20 years. Every single rezoning pushes Latino and blacks out of the neighborhood. Don't sit here and act like you don't know 11,000 Latinos and blacks got pushed out of Fort Greene, okay? Yes, and it's the same rat pack of figures, some of whom are here now, who show up and push rezonings. The next thing you want, movie theaters and arts and culture on 3rd Avenue. The same rat pack, BAM, Rebney, Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, Andrew Kimball sitting in the back, who helped push me out of Fort Greene. These are not your friends if you're poor or working class people, if you live in neighborhoods of color in New York City. He's the snake that pushed 11,000 Latinos and blacks out of Fort Greene. And listen very careful to the words he used here, his secret racial code words. Innovation economy. We heard that in Fort Greene 12 years ago. Outdated policies. Amber Kimball has not changed his colors. A decade ago, he stood in Fort Greene using the same code words. Innovation economy, outdated policies. You need to be very careful. You have at least 25 examples, Fort Greene, Harlem, South Bronx, Inwood, all over this city. Now, this shouldn't be a racial thing, but it is, because every single rezoning pushes poor people, who happen in these 25 examples to be Latinos and blacks. They're getting ready to wipe it. They're not here unless they could pitch tent and bring in the millionaires and the billionaires. They are not your friend, okay? We need to be very vigilant about where in Sunset Park you are going, and I thank you for your attention.
Regina Mayer, followed by Marcela, followed by Blanca Carabaju, followed by Randall Piers.
Good evening, Borough President Adams. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Regina Mayer, President of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership. I've dedicated my career to the city's revitalization, and I'm happy to be here in support of the Industry City zoning proposal. The historic decline and disinvestment in Industry City mirrored the citywide collapse of traditional manufacturing. Its revitalization in the past 6 years, with new companies in food and beverage production, architecture, design, product fabrication, has all helped Brooklyn return to a strong position in New York's economy. We should be doing everything we can to further this transformation. A recent study by the Center for an Urban Future highlighted the incredible growth of the economy in Brooklyn. Startup businesses are being created at a faster pace here than in any other borough, and faster than any other tech hub in the country apart from San Francisco. The report also shows that these Brooklyn businesses are employing a far more diverse workforce than in many of the nation's largest tech hubs. The study also recommended strategies that are key to the continued growth of the economy, all of which have been supported by Industry City's rezoning. First, we must continue to create affordable space for small businesses. Industry City has grown from 190 to 550 businesses in just 6 years. The rezoning will facilitate a doubling of that number to over 1,000 businesses, meaning thousands of jobs for Brooklynites. Second, we need to focus workforce development initiatives at the local level that are embedded in growing commercial campuses. Andrew Kimball and his team have achieved immense success with this model at the Navy Yard and repeated this success with the Innovation Lab at Industry City. We need to grow these initiatives further. And third, colleges and universities need to directly connect to business and create pathways to employment, particularly for CUNY students. Thank you.
Next speaker, Marcelo, followed by Blanca Carabujo, Randy Piers, and Moses Hernandez.
Hold on. Folks, I can hear the ring. We're not going to let people go any further. I hear the ding, ding, ding. I know when time is up. We're keeping the time up here, okay? So I can do this.
Good evening, Borough President Eric Adams. Good evening, Councilmember Carlos Menchaca. Thank you for being here and the opportunity to speak. My name is Marcela Martinez, and I'm a long-time resident of Sunset Park, but I'm also an employee for a community organization called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And a little over the last decade, I've been working in Sunset Park, keeping people in their homes, advocating and assisting individuals from being evicted, and also working with buildings to try and form tenant associations so the tenants can form the fight together against their landlords. Industry City's mere presence in Sunset Park is causing displacement. It's not that it's going to start if they get this rezoning. It's already happening. Their expansion is going to make it that much more worse. The mitigations, the ideas to try and stop the displacement is not going to work. The affordable housing is a long-term plan. We need something more immediate. The affordable housing isn't working because it's not available to low-income residents of this community. To the union members that are waiting to testify, we are not here to fight you. We should be standing together as working class people against this development. A job is only as good if you have a home that you can afford to go to. Industry City claims it's a place to work and play. They're gonna need somewhere to live, and they're looking and wanting our homes, and we are not gonna give it up without a fight. There are approximately 26 families that stand in the way. Property that wants to be taken over by Industry City. The working class are a sacrificial lamb for the amount of amenities that they're trying to bring. And for those of you that think that we're being too loud, I'm saying we're not being loud enough.
Thanks. Blanca, followed by Randy Piers, followed by Moses Hernandez, and then we're adding George Llama Rodriguez.
Sí. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Blanca Carabajo. Señor Eric Adams, muchísimas gracias por darnos la oportunidad de hablar y de que usted nos escuche. Yo vivo en Sunset Park por 25 años. Mi hijo nació allí. Él no conoce otro lugar que pueda llamar casa, más que ese lugar de Sunset Park. Yo tuve un negocio antes llamado Bush Terminal, hoy en día llamado Industry City. Hace algunos años nos sacaron a todos los negocios que allí habíamos. Teníamos muchas factorías, habíamos miles de mujeres, miles de madres de familia que trabajábamos allí. Era, como dicen, un lugar industrial, un lugar de factoría. Pero nos sacaron, querían que paguemos el doble de renta y nosotros, la verdad, no podíamos. Hoy Industry City lo ha cambiado todo. Ya no hay trabajo para la comunidad. Cada negocio que viene a Industry City viene con sus propios empleados. Es una área solo para personas de dinero. Además, la renta de nuestros apartamentos se ha duplicado. Nuestros caseros quieren que desocupemos. Estamos sufriendo de acoso. La comunidad está sufriendo. Industry City está pensando en construir hoteles, malls, universidades, pero no para la comunidad. Ya tenemos muchos hoteles en el área, ya tenemos malls. Lo que la comunidad necesita es que nuestros representantes trabajen junto a nosotros, nos apoyen, que no permitan la expansión de Industry City. Gracias.
Randy Piers, followed by Moses Hernandez, followed by George Llama Rodriguez.
Good evening. I'm Randy Piers on behalf of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and our 1,500 members. I'm pleased to offer this testimony in support of Industry City's rezoning application. While this support is being offered without conditions, it is our hope that a mutually agreeable community benefits agreement can be negotiated between the designated community representatives and Industry City. For us, this application is the difference between 6,000 jobs already created for Brooklynites and the potential of 20,000 jobs to come. Opponents of this project have you believe this is about gentrification. While the issue of residential displacement is real in Sunset Park, this project has no residential component. In fact, the hotel, one of the more controversial aspects of the plan, will be removed from the plan. There has also been several conditions that Councilmember Menchaca has already laid out that Industry City has agreed to, from job training investments to manufacturing space set-asides all of which Industry City has agreed to implement. Having served for 10 years as CEO of Opportunities for a Better Tomorrow, New York City and Sunset Park's leading job training provider for disconnected youth, I know firsthand what our youth are capable of. The companies that I see will attract and the jobs they will create are the jobs our youth aspire to, and don't anyone tell you otherwise. Once again, this is about jobs and opportunity. Having grown up in Brooklyn during the 70s and the 80s, I know firsthand how far the borough has come in creating a vibrant and dynamic economy. In particular, Sunset Park's 3rd Avenue was once an area no one wanted to be. The Industry City complex for decades stood as an example of urban industrial decline. With the new investments that have been made by Industry City, we have seen a resurgence that would be welcomed in almost any community around the country. Yet some seek to close the door on furthering the potential for greater community investments, as well as greater job potential. Therefore, I ask the Borough President to stand up for jobs and opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Moses Hernandez, followed by George Lima Rodriguez, followed by Ruben Colon, followed by Rebecca Hertzberger.
Mi nombre es Moisés Hernández Molina. He vivido en Sunset Park por 22 años y soy miembro de Vecinos Ayudando a Vecinos. Estoy preocupado por la solicitud de notificación de Industria City y cómo nos va a impactar los precios de viviendas en nuestra comunidad de Sunset Park. Yo he visto que el dueño, años pasados, habla con los vecinos que les dice que les va a reparar sus departamentos. Pero primero él dice que desocupen los departamentos y con el tiempo se los va a regresar. La mayoría no se los regresa y los desocupa y les dice que les va a dar dinero para que se vayan. Muchos de nuestros vecinos quedan desplazados por las promesas que el dueño nunca cumplió. Él hizo todo para atraer a gente nueva y aumentar la renta a través de más vecinos. Me preocupa esta reunificación que nos va a afectar con los años a nuestras familias. Y en las rentas, insisto, a la Junta Comunitaria 7 que vote que no, porque esta solicitud de Industria City amenaza el carácter de la comunidad de Sunset Park y va a acelerar los problemas del clima y desplazamiento de nuestras viviendas y de nuestros familiares. Thank you very much. Okay.
George Lima Rodriguez, followed by Ruben Colon, followed by Rebecca Hertzberger.
It doesn't work at that.
Followed by Andrew Boyd.
Excuse me, Richard. It goes by the order you called them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it has to go in the order that you called. You're the next person, George. Huh? I can't trade my spot.
George Lima Rodriguez.
You cannot change your spot. It needs to be you. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Jorge Llama Rodriguez. My family moved to Sunset Park when I was 9 and has been there ever since. My parents are both immigrants from Ecuador. My dad is a cab driver in the neighborhood while my mom cleans houses. Although I moved out recently, my loved ones still remain in Sunset Park, and because of such, I feel like a stakeholder in the community. I am concerned about Industry City's proposal because it puts low-income immigrants like my parents at risk. It proposes to build luxury, commercial, and rental spaces that will increase rent prices and displace my neighbors and loved ones. It also purports to create jobs specifically for Sunset Park residents, yet less than 10% of jobs and internships at Industry City are held by our people. Rather than invest in hotels, commercial spaces, and new buildings, we need to preserve the industrial sector and create jobs for people currently in and from Sunset Park. We need jobs that allow for mobility. We need jobs that address the adverse impacts of climate change, because climate change is an issue that literally threatens the lives of members of our community. To achieve this and more, we need a community-led effort. We need to enact UPROS's grid proposal, a community-led alternative to the IC proposal. Sunset Park is filled with experts. We know what we need and how to obtain it. We have put in the work to imagine a future for all of us where our people are fully and humanely employed, where we mitigate the adverse impacts of climate change, and where no one is forced to abandon their home because of rent increases. We want to invest in the future of our Sunset Park. We do not want to invest in the Sunset Park that Industry City imposes upon us. To continue with this plan is to blatantly disregard the voices and needs of the people that make Sunset Park what it is in the first place. For that reason, I encourage you, Council Member, Borough President, and Community Board 7 to vote no. Thank you.
Ruben Colon, followed by Rebecca Hertzberger, followed by Andrew Boyd, followed by Jessica Ortiz.
Thank you for hearing me today, Mr. Adams. My name is Ruben Colon. I am an area standards representative for the New York City and Vicinity District Council of Carpenters. We have a membership of approximately 20,000 members in New York City. I grew up in Sunset Park. Thanks to appointment by the Borough President's office, I also proudly serve on my Community Board 11. Equally as important and relevant to today's hearing, I represent approximately 200 carpenters, union carpenters, which live in the immediate area of the proposed rezoning. Given that I represent construction workers, it would be hypocritical of me to state that I am against development, but I must be clear. I must be clear. There is a difference between development which dooms countless of workers to poverty wages and rampant exploitation, and responsible development which may bring good, dignified, high-paying union jobs to a community. In this case, outreach and conversation with key industry city personnel has led to positive discussion, thereby setting the tone for a positive outcome. This is something not often experienced by me, given today's increasingly open shop environment. It should give us reason to genuinely pause and weigh the pros and cons of the proposal for rezoning. If Industry City is prepared to work with the various stakeholders towards responsible development and a potential community benefit agreement, then I believe we should take them up on their offer and not squander the opportunity. Thank you.
Rebecca Hertzberger, followed by Andrew Boyd, followed by Jessica Ortiz.
Oops, sorry. My name is Rebecca, and I first moved to Sunset Park in 2008. I moved to my block on 3rd Avenue in 2013, which I love. I'm here today to call on Borough President Eric Adams and my council member Carlos Menchaca to vote a hard no on the rezoning, which will worsen the gentrification on steroids we're already seeing in our neighborhood. Please do not believe the slick PR of Industry City and the glossy flyers that they hand out. Sunset Park residents, we don't want 1 million square feet of new retail. We don't want a developer-led rezoning, and we want to craft our vision for the waterfront. One thing that has always struck me about Industry City is when I'm walking on 36th Street and 4th Avenue, is that they have shuttles that emit all this carbon pollution into our air, shuttling people from 4th Avenue to 3rd Avenue so they don't have to walk 1 block through our neighborhood. So you're not good neighbors, and I ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Andrew Boyd, followed by Jessica Ortiz, followed by Eva Hanhart, followed by Rodrigo Camara.
Hello. My name is Andy Boyd, and I'm a resident of Sunset Park and a member of Democratic Socialists of America. Sunset Park is one of the great working-class neighborhoods of Brooklyn. It's a place where low and middle-income people have long been able to establish a dignified life. That is becoming more and more difficult with the presence of Industry City. This rezoning would accelerate displacement and gentrification. The people of Sunset Park need many things. We need affordable housing, we need good public services, we do not need luxury hotels or high-end real estate. When advocates for this rezoning say they want Brooklyn to be a tech hub like the San Francisco Bay Area, they ignore the hundreds of thousands of working-class Black and brown people who have been forced out of the Bay in recent years. That's the future they want, a playground for the rich with no room for working people. I strongly urge Borough President Adams, the Community Board, and Carlos Menchaca to oppose this rezoning. Thank you.
Jessica Ortiz, followed by Eva Hanhart, followed by Rodrigo Camara.
Yeah. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jessica Ortiz, and I am representing 32BJ. I'm here to talk about jobs and how this rezoning stands to impact building service workers and jobs. 32BJ is the largest property service union in the country. The union is comprised of more than 175,000 door persons, cleaners, airport workers, security officers, and building maintenance workers across 11 states. We represent more than 85,000 workers in New York City, including more than 1,100 32BJ members who live and work in Sunset Park. And we are in the process of bargaining a contract for 50 elevator operators and demolition workers employed by Industry City's owners. And last week, 60 contracted cleaners at Industry City voted to be represented by 32BJ. 32BJ supports a responsible rezoning of Industry City that helps raise standards for the existing workers and creates good new jobs. New investment in the Industry City site will provide an opportunity to lift up the current building service workers 32BJ represents, many of whom live and support families in the Sunset Park community. Additionally, the redevelopment of the Industry City site will generate hundreds of new building service jobs. We are pleased that the owners of Industry City have made a commitment to pay the prevailing wage. These jobs could be life-changing for members of the Sunset Park community. I personally know the impact a prevailing wage building service job can have on a family. Prior to getting a cleaning job that paid the prevailing wage, I worked 3 jobs to make ends meet and put food on my table. I relied on public assistance through Medicaid and food stamps despite the fact that I had 3 jobs. I started to work at Trinity School because I became a union member, and my family's life changed. We had security for the first time in our lives, and nothing is more important or powerful than knowing that your family will be able to eat and live with dignity. To make sure that these good jobs created at Industry City benefit residents, we fully support plans for local hire and workforce development. When it comes to building service jobs specifically, 32BJ operates one of the country's best building service training programs with career ladders and provide for growth and upward mobility. We are excited to work in the partnership with other community stakeholders. I have one more sentence. May I? On connecting local residents to job opportunities and to work collaboratively on a vision for workforce development. Thank you.
Thank you. Eva Hanhart, followed by Rodrigo Camara, followed by George Jones, followed by Justin Collins.
Okay. I'm Eva Hanhart, and I am an urban and environmental planner. I have 4 concerns. 1, the proposed rezoning with its focus on retail, hotels, office, and entertainment is inconsistent with 27 community, city, state, and federal plans and policies, all calling for maritime, industrial, and green development. 2, labeling something innovative does not make it so. As currently proposed, Industry City's rezoning is neither innovative nor needed. The DEIS never defines what business constitutes the innovation economy, nor explains why an innovation economy hub is infeasible without 900,000 square feet of retail, 2 hotels, 625,000 square feet of academic space, and additional parking. In a city as resource-rich as New York, are we to believe that innovation depends on incorporation of hotels and a large shopping and entertainment mall? Experiences in San Francisco and Seattle and in other New York industrial neighborhoods show that this model of development drives up real estate prices, leading to gentrification and displacement. 3, SECRA guidelines state the EIS should consider a range of reasonable alternatives, yet the DEIS omits evaluating another feasible alternative, the one based on the Green Resilient Industrial District proposed by UPROS. This alternative addresses climate change and should also be evaluated. 4, the issue of jobs. As an industrial business zone and significant maritime area, Sunset Park is ideally suited to take advantage of the city and state's commitments to addressing climate change. The City Climate Mobilization Act projects 27,000 jobs, and New York State's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act projects 150,000 jobs. With available industrial space, these jobs could be located in Sunset Park, but market pressures resulting from the rezoning could jeopardize the city's ability to get these green jobs. I urge you to disapprove the rezoning as currently proposed.
So again, requesting those who have already spoken, if you could go to the room below to watch the simulcast, we could create room for more people who want to speak to come upstairs. And now we have Rodrigo Camara.
Dear Council Member Carlos Menchaca and Borough President Eric Arms, I am a pastor in the Southwest Brooklyn region, and I am here on behalf of over 50 Sunset Park organizations and community leaders
who today published a letter to urge you to say no to this private waterfront plan. 7 years ago, a small group of private landlords purchased real estate in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, now known as Industry City. While current city land rules gives the new landlords tremendous opportunities to grow with their neighbors, they are now asking you as elected representatives for the people of Brooklyn for permission to scrap the manufacturing rules and to rewrite them with a special district. This will transform the largest working class industrial waterfront in Brooklyn into a destination for large luxury retail stores, corporate tenants, and hotels. This rezoning will accelerate the displacement of Sunset Park and South Brooklyn's working class residents. We have already seen this happen in downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and most recently in East New York. Without a real public waterfront plan, we are stuck with piecemeal private planning that fails to prepare Brooklyn for the new economy and climate change. The waterfront could be the centerpiece of a bold plan to green our future, as envisioned by climate justice groups like Uprose and the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance. The city's charter requires its leader to deliver a comprehensive citywide waterfront plan for 2030 this year. You can choose to seize this moment to deliver a public plan for all, or choose instead to prioritize a private plan that centers the corporate welfare of a few rich landlords. The fate and future of our waterfront is in your hands. We urge you to say no to this private waterfront plan and instead ask you to work together to publicly plan the future of Brooklyn with waterfront communities. Thank you.
George Jones, followed by Justin Collins, followed by Giselle Jimenez.
I'm gonna give. I guess we don't want any more testimony. I guess we don't want any more testimony. And Stephan, this gentleman here with the camera, if he does an outburst like this again, have him removed. If you want your neighbors to be heard, you're not going to disrupt a hearing in Borough Hall. That is just how I operate.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to stand before you and talk a little bit about myself and my company, Blue Marble Ice Cream. My name is George Jones, and I've been with Blue Marble Ice Cream for 8 years. I would like to say that it's truly been a transformation. I was raised in Red Hook projects to say that for most of my life and have seen Industry City develop into something I never would have imagined. It was mostly abandoned buildings in a place I just drove by quickly, not giving too much thought into it. But now, since I work there, you can see the transformation. Not only did Industry City revitalize the area, but it's a beautiful space that's inviting. Industry City is so diverse, it employs so many people and gives spaces to small private companies like the one I'm here representing. When I first got hired by Jennifer Dundas, the CEO, I was a truck driver in 2012. I was facilitating deliveries and drop-offs of clients. I didn't know if this was a job, a career, or for that matter, a long-term opportunity. I was just grateful for a fresh start in my life and moving forward into the next chapter. I've never worked for a small company. Working for a small company is a different animal. The details, the foresight, you truly have to believe in the person running the company and the person itself, as well as the company itself. I had to be all in. It wasn't just a job for me anymore. I knew exactly where this company was going, and I wanted to be a part of it. Over the years, she has given me more responsibility, more hands-on with the business side of things. You get a different perspective when you see how a business is run from the inside. Last year, I was promoted to Vice President of Operations, a top 2 employee position here. I oversee logistics, sourcing, and production. I now spend my days at a desk instead of a wheel. I have seen new brand and new clientele, more business opportunities at Blue Marble Ice Cream. We are expanding, and it's an honor to witness it all. I would also like to thank Industry City for believing in my company and giving us a home. A beautiful new space recently we moved into. It's bigger and more effective. You guys have thought of everything that we would need to further our goals to years to come. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Justin Collins, followed by Giselle Jimenez, followed by Sayar Lionel, followed by PM DeMauro.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Justin Collins, and I am a member of Community Board 7. As somebody who's worked in the fields of economic and workforce development with more than 5 years' experience in and around the Sunset Park Industrial Business Zone, I am 100% opposed to Industry City's rezoning efforts, which are emblematic of the deeply flawed way real estate development and rezoning efforts are conducted across New York City. I'll let others dive into specifics on the actual application itself, but I'll explain the 5 key reasons why I'm opposed to this rezoning effort. First, the ULURP application and draft environmental impact statement insufficiently address the issue of indirect displacement, both of local residents as well as the industrial and manufacturing businesses that have called the Sunset Park waterfront home for decades. Many local renters are rightly concerned with the impact of Industry City on residential as well as industrial rents, which could exacerbate gentrification in the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that's largely working class. It's an immigrant community. It's a community of color. And this is compounded by the fact that working class communities of color across the city are experiencing pressures related to gentrification, making it even more likely that if residents are forced to leave Sunset Park, they'll have to leave New York City entirely. The burden is on Industry City as the ones proposing the rezoning to make the case that this wouldn't be the case. They just haven't done it. I'm short on time, so I'll go quickly. While Industry City has made arguments regarding the potential increase in living wage jobs resulting from the rezoning, there's really no data behind it for these job projections, as well as the arguments for how these jobs will be offered to the local community that exists, which will suffer the negative externalities and the negative effects of the rezoning. The new jobs argument is unpersuasive. Third, despite the efforts of a local council through which members of the community met with IC to negotiate in good faith, IC put their application out there.
Get asked to sum up, please.
Yes, sure. They put their application out. They filed their ULURP application without notice before the negotiations were concluded, and only pulled it when the council member and 2 members of Congress pulled it back. Anyway, I'm 100% against it. Thank you.
Giselle Jimenez, followed by Sayar Lionel, followed by PM DeMauro, followed by Donna Sanders.
My name is Giselle Jimenez. My family has lived in Sunset Park since the 60s. They immigrated here from the Dominican Republic. I am reading from the publicly available and thorough report released by the de Blasio administration called the Engines of Opportunity and Industrial Action Plan. In November 2015, Mayor Bill de Blasio and Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito stood together to announce a 10-point industrial action plan to grow 21st century industrial and manufacturing jobs in New York City. Here are a few of the points. Continue investments in city-owned assets and infrastructure, impose a zoning text amendment to limit hotels and self-storage in industrial business zones, and announce that administration will not consider private rezonings in industrial business zones. We clearly don't need to convince politicians that it makes sense not to pass this rezoning. They know, they just don't care. The fact that we have to come here before you and beg is humiliating. So when I speak, I do not speak to you or to any politician because I have yet to be convinced that they actually care to act on anything we have to say. And when I speak, I don't speak to Andrew Kimball or anyone else who is a mouthpiece for vultures and who exploit our desperation for work and education and housing by manipulating members of my community into thinking we need to let you satisfy your white savior complex. When I speak only to my community members. When you talk trash about your own neighborhood and talk about gangs and drugs and poverties of Sunset Park in comparison to what it is now, think about what you are saying. These victims are our brothers and friends and fathers and daughters. When you support Industry City, you are saying that instead of giving these people help, the solution for improving our neighborhood is to kick them out and replace them with whiter and richer and more educated people. The proposed rezoning is a joke. The idea of a community benefits agreement is a joke. I'm not part of any nonprofit organization or group. I'm just a student who has done enough research to think critically for herself. I urge you to do the same, and the answer will be clear. We don't need a private rezoning. We need even stricter zoning laws.
Thank you. Sayer Lionel, followed by PM DeMeo, followed by Donna Sanders.
We're closing the hearing.